Hello. In Turkey, good afternoon. And in the United States, good morning. Well, this is a very challenging day because we are experiencing another day in the US, Israeli, and Iranian war. And in this panel, we want to specifically focus on the South Caucasus. Why? First of all, there was a peace process, and still it is. It's running. And we were, at the edge of signing something, and suddenly a lot happened in the region. And maybe for God's sake, this war did not affect the peace process in South Caucasus, especially between Azerbaijan and Armenia. And that's the good news. On the other hand, all countries, Turkey, Azerbaijan, or Armenia, are very concerned about the security and stability in the region because we all discuss if this war may expand to somewhere that we don't know. So it's the basic question. And there are a lot of dynamics right now in the region, like connectivity projects, starting from the development project in Iraq, peace crossroads projects, energy projects, pipelines, and think that once you delve exactly the energy resources of Caucasus and Central Asia, Iranian war made the region really prominent in sustaining as an energy hub. On the other hand, we must be aware that there are vulnerabilities. Russia is an actor over there, and think that regional issues, what's happening in Georgia right now, is important. And this war should be discussed in detail pertaining to the impact of it to South Caucasus, mainly Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Turkey. So that's why we have invited very distinguished guests. I would like to introduce them in order. Mr. Məhəmməd is a member of Topçubaşı Center and an expert on Iran. So he will be the one delving the issue within the eyes of Azerbaijan. Mr. Benyamin Poghosyan, he is working for APRI Armenia, a new think tank, right, established in 2022. And we had met each other in Ankara last month. And he will tell us exactly the Armenian perspective because there are a lot ongoing in Armenia. And Professor Kenan Aslanlı, he is a faculty member in Yıldıırm Beyazıt University, and he will tell us more about the technical impact of this war to the region in overall South Caucasus. So I would like to ask a question first, just to encourage our speakers to delve the issues related to their countries or the region, covering the overall region as well. I would like to ask a question to Mr. Məhəmməd. Well, a lot is ongoing. There's a great question mark in Iran regarding South Azerbaijanis. Think that there was an attack similar to the ones targeting Turkey, missile attack in Nakhchivan. And President Aliyev clearly ordered army to be ready for any sort of scenario. So what is the perception of Azerbaijan regarding this war? And what could be the projections? What could happen? What's your perspective? The floor is yours, Mr. Məhəmməd.
Well, thank you, Murat Bey. Thank you, first of all, for invitation from SETA. Thank you very much for wonderful organization of this event. And I'm very glad to see my colleagues, my esteemed colleagues in this panel. Well, first of all, let me start with mentioning that Azerbaijan is the only country in the world bordering Russia and Iran at the same time. So right now, both Russia and Iran are in the midst of a major power war. And in recent years, we have seen that in both cases, it has spilled over to their relations with Azerbaijan. Right now, Azerbaijan is undergoing some difficulties in relations with both Tehran and Moscow. So what's different now in Iran case is the scale of the war. This scale of war is unprecedented, of course, not only for Azerbaijan, but also for all countries involved. It has spread to Gulf countries. Right now, Iranian armed forces, IRGC especially, is sending drones and ballistic missiles to almost all neighbors in the Persian Gulf, including friendly ones, Oman and Turkey. 2 days ago, they hit Oman. It was quite a big attack, and today we learned that there was the third attack on Turkish territory. I mean, reportedly. So it shows the scale of the event, which is unprecedented. And what's also another difference from previous cases is that Iran is targeting energy infrastructure in the region, at the same time economic centers, which stay closely associated with the US and Israeli presence in the region, which increases, of course, uncertainty for Azerbaijani side, who is a close partner of Israel and Turkey in the region. So previously, we had gone through this process. You know, in 2024, in April 1st, Israel attacked Iran for the first time since revolution in '79. And in October, Iranian side retaliated. At that time, there was this expectation that how it would affect Azerbaijan. But at that time, Iran-Azerbaijan ties survived that crisis. I would even tell you that in April, after 5 weeks, when Israel attacked, Iranian consulate in Syria, Azerbaijan and Iran conducted joint military exercises, and defense ministers visited each other. So it showed that there was some coordination, and the two sides could overcome the uncertainty. And second, after 12-day war, yes, after the war, there were some unproven allegations that some Israeli aircraft or drones flew from Azerbaijani territory, but then again, the two sides overcome this problem. Mr. Pezeshkian came to Baku, even if the airspace was closed, and the relations moved back to pragmatic ties. Now we have spillover, which is the open case. As you mentioned rightly, there was a drone attack on Nakhchivan, Azerbaijani territory. So the question is how Azerbaijan reacts. So far, I would summarize it in one phrase. It's a fine balance Azerbaijan is trying to find between signaling deterrence and strength through proportional means, while avoiding being sucked into this war, which is again large scale and could prove detrimental for Azerbaijan's national security. So in the beginning, there was apology. Azerbaijan leadership required apology from Iranian side. I think it was a good off-ramp because it gave the two sides some time to measure their moves. And then there was this suspension of cargo transit through Azerbaijani territory, which is very important for Iranian economy, especially after maximum pressure sanctions from the US. Azerbaijan is the main highway linking Iran with its one of major economic partners, Russia. And then Azerbaijan declared that it would withdraw its embassy and consulate staff from Tabriz and Tehran. So these, I think, two measures were quite important, signaling Azerbaijani unease what happened in Nakhchivan, while again stopping short of any military or any other moves that would escalate the issue further. So then we saw that there was some normalization. Mr. Pezeshkian apologized in general. It was a general apology, not specifically aimed at Azerbaijan, but it was enough, I think. And then he called President Aliyev. There was a phone call, and where I think we saw some warmth. I mean, there was the signal that the relations would return back to normalcy. And then after a day, cargo transit was restored from Azerbaijani side, and Baku went further, declaring sending humanitarian aid to Tehran. So right now, what is the main problem? For Azerbaijan, the main problem, and this problem is not new, the main problem is duality in Iranian decision-making. On the one side, Azerbaijan leadership is talking to Pezeshkian and presidential administration, foreign ministry, which I think represents the softer side of Iranian foreign policy. But on the other side, we have IRGC, who is calling the shots in Tehran now. And in IRGC, we have this horizontal decision-making in the absence of Khamenei. And we see that, I think it's already a prevailing wisdom that the attack on Oman and Turkey also on Azerbaijan must be related with this, that there is no control and on command and control system of Iran, and there is horizontal decision making, and some rogue groups within the IRGC decided to act autonomously and send drones or ballistic missiles to friendly neighboring countries. So that's the main problem right now for Azerbaijan. Again, the duality. And again, as I mentioned, it's not new. It happened in 2021 and 2022 when Iran conducted unprecedented military exercises along Azerbaijani borders. And at that time, I remember Azerbaijan responded with proportional measures. Together with Turkey, there were a joint military exercise along the Iranian border. Again, another unprecedented move. But at the same time, Azerbaijan was trying to compartmentalize, talking to Pezeshkian, not at that time Pezeshkian, but the Raisi government and Abdullahian, the foreign minister, that Azerbaijan and Iran can cooperate at least on the north-south corridor. There are room for partnership. So it was compartmentalization of relations, which is the same now. We are trying to compartmentalize, but how you do it in wartime? This is the problem. So in wartime, the specter of miscalculation increases, and now we are amid that prospect of increasing miscalculation in relations with Iran. I think I'll stop here and...
Okay. Okay, thank you. And that's for sure. I totally agree with you. Hitting friends, well, it's something, inconsistency, because Oman and Qatar is significant in here once you are searching for ways to, because there must be an exit strategy in every war. And the number of countries who are able to contribute in concluding this war, well, they are limited. And once you attack them, that means you will exclude them for the probable diplomatic missions. And energy infrastructure, I think we should discuss exactly if it's a correct or appropriate strategy or not. Maybe I will ask this question to Professor Kenan. So let me go to Armenia. Benjamin, as you may know, currently politics in Armenia right now is very complex. On this, in some way, Pashinyan is trying to sustain a process. In other way, Iran is a fact of Armenia. So what is the agenda in Armenia regarding Iran and this war? Because, I mean, it should not be, or it's not an easy situation, especially for Armenia. What's your assessment?
Thank you. To thank the SETA Foundation for organizing this timely webinar, and also thanks for hosting APRI Armenia delegation at SETA headquarters in 1 month ago in early February 2026. Regarding the Armenia's perception, what is happening in Iran and Iran war, I believe first of all, the key interest of Armenia is the stable Iran. Armenia is interested in stable Iran. Any long-term instability in Iran will impact very negatively to Armenia on different ways. First of all, around 20% of export-import operations with world takes place through Iranian territory, because Armenia has only 2 open borders, Iran and Georgia, which means that any long-term instability may impact these export-import operations, and also it may trigger some inflations in Armenia. Also, there is a humanitarian dimension. If there is a long-term instability, then Armenia, by the way, also Azerbaijan and Turkiye, may face significant influx of refugees. And this may create humanitarian crisis. It will put enormous pressure on healthcare system, social welfare system, especially for Armenia, which embraced refugees from 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh war, a lot of Russian reluctants after 2022 start of Russia-Ukraine war, and also 110,000 Armenians who were forced to leave Nagorno-Karabakh in September 2023. So this is a humanitarian dimension. And also there is a connectivity issues. Armenia was pushing forward different projects, including Persian Gulf, Black Sea, which envisages a connection of Iranian Persian Gulf ports with Georgian Black Sea ports. There was this international north-south transport corridor, and Armenia thought that it also could be part of it, connecting India with Europe, additional route, India-Europe via Iran and Armenia. And all these connectivity projects is now under doubts what may happen, again, if there is a long-term instability in Iran. And even Trump route for international peace and prosperity. Okay, if we see unstable Iran for long term, what does it mean for TRIP? Will TRIP be part of large-scale cargo transportation from Central Asia to Europe or not? Or it will be mainly used to connect Azerbaijan with Turkey via Nakhichevan. So a lot of question, but one thing is very clear. Long-term instability is absolutely not in line with Armenia's interests. And of course, we understand also that Armenia is not in a position to significantly influence what's happening. So we may only look through, we may try to analyze, we may try to assess, and we may try to mitigate risks from the potential long-term instability in Iran. Regarding the peace process between Armenia and Azerbaijan and full normalization between Armenia and Turkey, what this war means or what could be the impact of it. Let's fix that despite significant success, which parties reached in August 2025 in Washington by signing Washington Declaration and also pre-signing or initialing peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan, peace has not been institutionalized fully yet. We do not have signed and ratified peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and we do not have full normalization between Armenia and Turkey, including full border opening between Armenia and Turkey and also between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And Armenian understanding is that the war in Iran shows that we should put more efforts to use the momentum which came out from Washington meeting. No momentum can last forever. We all know that momentums has a custom to be finished, to end. So the Iran war shows that any geopolitical complications in the region may negatively impact the situation. So what Armenia believes that Iran war shows is another evidence that we need to use the momentum created by Washington summit in August 2025. And what does it mean to use the momentum? A, sign and ratify Armenia-Azerbaijan peace agreement to institutionalize the peace, not to have a peace based on political leaders' understandings. Because we all know what are the political leaders. Today, they are speaking about peace between Armenia and Azerbaijan and how it's nice to live in peace for the last 7 months. But next day or 1 month from now, they may speak totally different things if there is a no institutionalized peace. And in the last 6-7 years, if you look into Armenia-Azerbaijan relations and negotiations, you may see that there were ups and downs. A very positive environment followed by a very negative environment. Again, to not be fully dependent on political leaders' personal thinking, personal wishes, we need institutionalized peace, which means signed and ratified peace agreement. And second, as also we discussed during our visit to Turkey and in SETA headquarters, full normalization between Armenia and Turkey is connected with the ratification of peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan. At least this is some sort of Turkey's position that, okay, as far as there is a no full signed and ratified Armenia-Azerbaijan peace agreement, it will be extremely challenging to speak about full Armenia-Turkey normalization, including full opening of Armenia-Turkey border, including railroad between Gyumri and Kars. So that is why Armenia-Azerbaijan peace agreement signature and ratification, it will not only institutionalize peace between Armenia and Azerbaijan, but it will pave the way for the full normalization between Armenia and Turkey. In this case, we will have more integrated, more stable South Caucasus, which will be less vulnerable for external shocks and external influences. So probably this is the main lesson from the war in Iran. Of course, nobody knows probably how long this may continue and whatever impact will be. But the main conclusion from Armenian side is that let's use the momentum created in August 2025 in Washington. Let's finish the business, sign and ratify peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Let's go to full normalization between Armenia and Turkey. And let's have more connected, more stable South Caucasus, which will also be less vulnerable and will be more resilient. Thank you.
Thank you, Benjamin. And for sure, we see from your discussion that, and it was a very comprehensive report. I read it last month. There's an expectation from the Armenian side, especially from Turkey and also Azerbaijan. And this war is important to emphasize to what extent and with what agenda and what details. I mean, this is another issue. And I will ask you maybe another question in the coming period. But let me go to Professor Aslanlı. You are dealing mostly about the energy projects and regional geopolitics affiliated to energy. So this is a very fragile situation right now, environment. Why? Think that right after the Russian-Ukraine war, the Caucasus and Central Asia are linked to European markets. I think that, first of all, there's a competition in these countries if this gas will flow towards the west or the east. Second thing, there must be a safe passage. We know that Georgia has been the most reliable route right now, and Iranian war has taught us something important. It's what there must be alternative routes. And third, that's the only way. I mean, very open to Russian diffusion, Russian intervention. So how do you assess the energy-related politics in the region, and how do you link it to the Iranian war? The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Aslan, for organizing this timely event and inviting me. And also, I want to greet the colleagues from Azerbaijan and Armenia. As you point out correctly, the energy now sits in the center of this war and this conflict. And actually, it is not a new trend that erupted in this last round of USA, Israel, and Iran war. Actually, we can observe the similar patterns in Russia-Ukraine war and Iran-Israel war. So what does it mean? It means so energy factor functions or realize triple functions. On one hand, energy is a strategic aim in these conflicts. In another hand, energy is a tactical instrument that can be manipulated by the actors. And most important, especially in the last round of this conflict between Iran, Israel, and USA, energy actually functions as an operational target that are targeted directly by the conflicting sides and both sides. So it is a similar trend also in Russia-Ukraine war and also in Israel-Iran-USA war, that we see that both sides of the conflicts directly target the energy infrastructure in order to raise the cost of the war for the other side. If you actually go a little bit back about this targeting of this infrastructure, critical energy infrastructure that has global importance, we can see that even Russia-Ukraine war was not turning point. From my perspective, turning point was 2019, September 2019. If you will remember, Iran's proxies attacked Saudi Arabia's critical energy infrastructure. It was, I think, the first global scale attacks to the critical energy infrastructure in this region, September 2019, including all this Ras Tanura, some other critical energy assets of this. And now we can see the continuation of this trend, but maybe in more extreme ways. So what does it mean, most extreme ways? It means, from my perspective, again, there is no any energy, critical energy infrastructure in the region that is safe from the attacks for this conflict. I mean, all this critical energy infrastructure that actually locate in close neighborhood of Iran, including South Caucasus republics. From South Caucasus perspective, why it is important? Because it can continue. It is part of Iran's forward defense strategy. Actually, it is a continuation of Iran's forward defense strategy. That means, from Iranian perspective, to counter enemies beyond the border, using the proxies, using the long-range missiles, and now drone technologies. The continuation of this forward defense strategy, if that will collapse partly, that happens today. So it means if proxies will weaken, if some missile capacity cannot be utilized fully, then continuation of this strategy is a destabilization of close neighborhood. From Iranian perspective, it's a Gulf mostly, because Gulf actually hosts global scale energy infrastructure, and it hosts Hormuz Strait. That actually is a transit for the at least 20% of the crude oil, but not only, also condensate, oil products, etc. That's why the first target of the Iran's is in addition to the US base, is the energy access of the Gulf countries. But also, especially taking into account this last pattern of Iran's behavior, that they demonstrated that they can destabilize the entire region first, and they also demonstrated that there is no country limit. there is no exception on this destabilization. That's why I'm saying that in addition to this Gulf region, also in South Caucasus, the security of critical energy infrastructure is a #1 issue. It is especially a challenge for Azerbaijan because Azerbaijan is the only oil and gas exporting country in South Caucasus. And definitely we will see more interest from the actors from European Union for the gas of this region. Why? Because also colleagues point out that, so we have, how to say, north route, all this in energy and transportation connectivity through Russia. And then, especially in transport connectivity, we have Southern Corridor, Central Asia, Iran, Middle East, or Central Asia, Iran, Turkey, and Europe. So we have destabilization in both. So we have middle corridor. And in this sense, I say middle corridor, not from the only cargo transportation connectivity, but also from the energy perspective. And from this perspective, we have Azerbaijan and Azerbaijan's growing role in European Union's energy security, especially for the natural gas. And now Azerbaijan exports the natural gas to 16 different countries, including 10 European Union countries. And we see signs that European Union will have a growing interest. But in order to realize all these regional connectivity projects, and also in order to benefit from these high oil and gas prices, the region and special Azerbaijan needs to secure the security of energy infrastructure. And I think that Turkey also can play a role, critical role here to protect all these critical energy infrastructure that also contribute to the energy security of Turkey. This is first issue. I think the most important issue, the physical security of critical infrastructure. If actually there will not be any force majeure or emergencies and all these energy flows will continue to from the Caspian region to European Union to Turkey or via Turkey, including oil and gas, then we can maybe have some economic benefits as well, definitely, because now we have high oil and gas prices, and Azerbaijan's state budget will definitely benefit from this high oil and gas prices, despite the fact that it is only one part of the story. So, for example, for my calculations, for example, before the war, the price of oil was around the $70 per barrel, and now it's more than 100. For this increase, the Azerbaijan state budget will benefit around the $3 billion US. Or if you will add this kind of extra revenues from the gas, from transits, it will be equal around the 5% of the country's GDP. But it is one part of the story, because also we will see sprawling up inflation, raising food prices that are based on also fuel prices, and it will hit back to all countries, including the Azerbaijan's economy. And here I want to add one dimension as well. So there is a misperception that it is only Azerbaijan in South Caucasus that export natural resources, but actually not. So Armenia and Georgia also export natural resources, mostly metals. In case of Armenia, gold, silver, copper. In case of Georgia, ferroalloys, also copper. So, and we know that it is not only about the rising oil and gas prices. We see wide range of products that their prices started to surge, including metals, including fertilizers, etc. So other two South Caucasus countries also will benefit economically from this rising metal prices. But as I said before, it is one part of the story. Later, if this crisis will continue and will deepen, we will see rising inflation that will hit back to all economies. And social policies will be, again, most important priorities for the governments. In this sense, again, Azerbaijan has an advantage. Why? Because it's the largest economy, and it has the largest strategic foreign exchange reserves in the region. The sum of Azerbaijan's strategic foreign exchange reserves, including also gold reserves, is around more than $90 billion US, and country's GDP is $80 billion US. So country accumulated strategic foreign exchange reserves more than country's annual GDP. It means we name this fiscal buffer, that you can use this buffer during this kind of external shock. So Azerbaijan economy definitely has this buffer, but again, actually there will be some negative repercussions also because as colleagues already said, so in case of Azerbaijan and Armenia, there was some north-south cargo transportation and also import of the products and relatively cheap foods and construction products from Iran played an important role in the economy, especially of Azerbaijan and Armenia, maybe not much for Georgia. So that's why there will be some micro-level impacts, adverse impacts on these economies as well. So this is one part of the story, but also there are some uncertainties. I don't know to touch these uncertainties now, maybe in last round, but this conflict also creates some, from my perspective, some important and serious uncertainties, especially about the future of regional connectivity projects. Maybe I can touch that in last round or in next round. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you. You know, you inspired me to ask another question to all, actually. First of all, I have just noticed, especially my own judgment, that we are too Iran-oriented, and we always assess what will happen to this question related to Iran. But we have the United States and Israel as another party of this war, and think that there are two parties, Iran and the US and Israel are one party at all. On the other hand, once you think about the three countries in general, there are a lot of dynamics that's running by itself. So I would suggest to start a SWOT analysis. What are the strengths? What are the opportunities? What are the weaknesses? What are the threats perceived? Can you please, starting from Mr. Mehmedov, what's your SWOT analysis regarding Azerbaijan? And then I will pass the same question to Benyamin regarding Armenia. And I kindly request Professor Aslanlı, together with this thing that you have raised, what's your SWOT analysis regarding energy and the region, the overall region? And Mr. Mehmedov, please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, energy is, I think, for now, in the global energy market, there are some trends that we should definitely take into account when we analyze this issue, because we know that the markets have so far been not that hungry to immediately react to this. There was surplus capacity in the market, and we saw that even after the early days of the war, the prices increased, but it soon returned back to normal. But of course, as Iranian attacks continues, we'll see further destabilization there. Yesterday, there was 400 million barrels of oil from entered market from International Energy Agency. Different big countries contributed to that. But still, we saw that it didn't help. Now the price is around 95. Azeri Light is 95 per barrel. So for Azerbaijan, the point is, yes, it increases the strategic importance of alternative energy supplies such as Azerbaijan, because Azerbaijani oil and gas are sent to specific markets, especially in Europe, and where they are much needed now. But we should, it's mostly about price. Azerbaijan will benefit mostly from price. Because many people argue that, okay, Russia will win, other energy supplies will win, but the question is, can you add more barrels into the market? Neither Azerbaijan nor even Russia has this capacity, because in case of Russia it's war related, mostly their infrastructure investments decreased last year, but in the case of Azerbaijan also oil and production capacity, it has not increased so much in recent years. It's decreasing, so Azerbaijan will benefit from the price. If price increases, so the same is about pipeline. Recently, high-level European officials were in Baku for a high-level meeting with President Aliyev. There were discussions there that now it is time to think about the strategic importance of pipeline gas. Because we know that when Iran started to attack vessels, this LNG cargoes, especially that belongs to Qatar, and they even targeted Qatari industrial capacity, this gas processing plants. So they are out of the game. So it really increased the gas price in Europe because of China-related demand and shift of cargoes there. So in that regard, Azerbaijan in recent years have been in discussions with the European Commission that you should commit financial, let's say, involvement to increase the capacity of southern gas corridors so that Azerbaijan can increase its supply. It's not only about Azerbaijan itself investing, So there were some unmet expectations there. I think what Iranian attacks on Hormuz and Qatar's, let's say, paralysis of Qatar's supplies teach the European Union that maybe they should think more seriously about pipeline gas. As you know, due to the green transition, they stopped almost long-term investments on pipelines, gas. So the natural gas is now a transitional energy resource, and Azerbaijan wants Europe to invest more, both on pipeline upgrade infrastructure and at the same time investment in new fields, new gas fields in the Caspian Sea. So recently in January, we saw that the capacity of Top was upgraded 1.2 billion cubic meters when Azerbaijan declared that it will sell gas to Germany and Austria, and new EU member states. So again, it shows it's possible. The capacity of southern gas corridor can be increased, and I think a major gain from Azerbaijan from this crisis in the Persian Gulf is the importance, geopolitical importance of the pipeline gas will increase. On the other hand, there is this vulnerability that the war, the conflict, the clash could very easily spill over to the Caspian Sea and the South Caucasus. So Azerbaijan and its partners will have to go a long way to increase efforts to security of these pipelines and infrastructure. My colleague brought in Middle Corridor. When we talk about the Middle Corridor, we mostly focus on how many amount of cargo moved across the route, or the barrels of oil or cubic meters of gas, but we rarely speak about how we should provide its security, because in previous years it was mostly a neglected issue. Right now, what's happening in the Gulf, or what Iran is doing in the neighborhood, shows that we should more seriously think about the security of the Middle Corridor. So Azerbaijan has been recently increasing its capabilities in the Caspian Sea to neutralize potential threats, whether it's maritime drones or even in Vice President Vance's latest visit to South Azerbaijan, there was agreement that the United States would provide boats, maritime boats, to Azerbaijan. So it all was aimed at increasing security in the Caspian Sea. And I think, Azerbaijan's calculation is that, yes, as in the 1990s, there is another crisis both in the north and south. This is what makes Azerbaijan, Armenia, Georgia pivotal for Western designs in the region. But on the other side, you are vulnerable to the potential spillover of these conflicts, because we also saw that in about 6 months ago, Ukrainian drones hit Russian platforms, oil platforms in the Caspian Sea. It shows how the wars in the north and south at the same time can spill over to the South Caucasus and the Caspian Sea. So it's a mixed, let's say, calculation for Azerbaijan, and I think Baku is coordinating its moves with its close partners, both in energy and connectivity sphere, to get maximum benefit from, to turn this crisis into opportunity.
Okay. Thank you so much, dear Mohammed. And Benjamin, what's your analysis, SWOT analysis?
I think strength is the Armenian diversified foreign policy. Now we have strategic partnership with the United States, growing relations with the EU. We have strategic partnership with China, and we manage not to burn all bridges with Russia. Still, Armenia is a member of Eurasian Economic Union, and we still host the Russian border troops and Russian military base. So this is definitely strength in this complicated and fluid situation, to have diversified foreign policy, to have new partners, but also not to transform your old partners into new enemies. Regarding the weakness, I believe the key weakness is the part that still Armenia has only 2 operational open borders, Georgia and Iran, and this means that any significant instability in one of these countries, Georgia or Iran, definitely may significantly impact Armenia's domestic situation. I mean, starting from inflation, starting from food security, social security, and etc. This is definitely the weakness. Opportunities, as I mentioned, means the possibility to use the momentum triggered by Washington August 2025 summit and finalize this peace process with Azerbaijan and full normalization process with Turkiye. And as I mentioned, Armenia is ready to do that. It's mostly up to Azerbaijan and Turkiye, but still this is opportunities. And threat is that all the geopolitical complications in the region may negatively impact the Armenia-Azerbaijan and Armenia-Turkiye process, that we all together will miss this momentum to finalize and institutionalize peace. And then after a few years from now, again, region will be jumped back into the conflict mindset. And again, we will think not about opening the borders, cooperate and communicate, but rather to think, okay, how to prevent new escalation, how to prevent new attacks. These could be the threats.
Thank you. And Professor Kenan?
So in my case, it can be, again, SWOT, but for the regional perspective. So not for country-specific, for the regional perspective for the South Caucasus. So strength is definitely geographical or position and geostrategical position, and also the resources in case of especially Azerbaijan's oil and gas resources. And as I said, now it is not all about the oil and gas, especially during the energy transition. We mostly talk about the metals, and other 2 countries as well, Armenia and Georgia, they have the metal resources, also Azerbaijan. So this is strength. The weakness is definitely comes from the regulatory side, especially if we approach from the connectivity perspective. So, but it is not, again, country-specific. It is a problem of middle corridor. Okay. If you look at all these international organizations' reports, if you look at all these assessments, we can see that despite all these improvements, still there are very serious shortcomings and bottlenecks in Middle East, coming from the different regulations, different standards, that and also it stems from this multi-modal nature of middle corridor, including this railway and then sea transportation and then railway, highway, etc. So these issues are the regulatory issue and lack of coordination. And also we can add here, or we can incorporate South Caucasus countries. So this is very actually good news that now there is no active conflict environment in South Caucasus that can be directly exploited and manipulated by external actors, but we cannot say that there are coordinations among these 3 South Caucasus countries about any external issues or about the coordination, how to benefit from this rising interest in middle corridor from the European side, etc., etc. So again, and here we can maybe underline the interest, growing interest of the European Union as an opportunities of this SWOT, definitely. And we will see the growing interest from the European Union to this region. And also United States of America, despite the fact that we have some uncertainties about the priorities of United States of America. So we know that now it is a priority, but how it will change after the, let's say, 2028 elections in US, or even this year's elections. So how this configuration will change. So we have some elections related risk also in Armenia, but in case of US, it is about the US entire approach. Now we see some signs that America's approach, especially this corridor, this Trump route, it can be bipartisan. So it can be on this interest of the, for example, Republican Party, etc. That's why, especially in last few months, we saw bipartisan delegations from US that visited to the South Caucasus. It can be also perceived as a sign, but again, it is a test. We will see that how this US priorities will change about this connectivity, especially South Caucasus, but we will definitely see growing interest from the EU. But here we have also threats. And let me shift from opportunities to threats and start from these uncertainties and start from the EU. So what is problem in EU's perspective? If you will ask when in the meetings to EU officials, yes, they want more cargo transportation through middle corridor to European market. Yes, they want more oil and gas from this corridor, from this middle corridor, bypassing Iran, Russia, etc., etc. But when they approach the investments, we see that they still have some hesitations. So they have some activism, but it is not translated to the real investments from the EU to the region, to the infrastructure, to the alternative sectors, and et cetera, to the development areas. So this is, I think, this is uncertainty. Also, we all know how decision-making process happens in Brussels, all this red tape, and et cetera, et cetera. Another uncertainty that can be perceived as a threat, we don't know what will look like Iran after the war. What type of post-war Iran we will have, and how Iran's perspective toward especially this Trump route or Zengezur corridor will change. We know that from the early beginning, from 2021, Iran actually had inclination to securitize Zengezur corridor on if you will use this recent name, Trump route. So they named this as a NATO corridor or Trump corridor, and so always a securitization argument prevailed from the Iran's perspective. But later in late 2022, we had an agreement between Iran and Azerbaijan to have parallel corridor in the territory of Iran in the south part of the Aras River. And it is named also Aras corridor. So it somehow mitigated the position of Iran, but we will not, we are not sure how Iran's position will change after this war, because their threat perceptions can change, and et cetera, et cetera. This is also another issue. So another uncertainty that can be also perceived as a threat is a fact that this war is a test for Russia-Iran alliance or Russia-Iran strategic partnership. So far, we see them hesitations from the Russian side, but we also have some information that the Ukrainian, for example, specialists involved very actively to the Gulf countries, anti-drone capabilities, etc. And we know that, especially Professor Aslan, you are a security specialist, you know that when we have two parts of the conflict, when one part of conflict engages, another one actually comes automatically. For example, what does it mean? It means if Russians will see that Ukrainians actually actively work in that part, they will be also actively engaged. It looks like India's active engagement to the anti-Turkiye, for example, geopolitical process to compensate Turkiye-Pakistan relationship. So we don't know what will happen in Russia-Iran relationship. So how their threat perceptions will converge after this conflict regarding this alternative connectivity through South Caucasus. It is also, I think, important variables that we have to watch, we have to monitor, and it can create some uncertainties and risks as well.
Okay, thank you so much. I think we have 12 minutes. I'm checking the questions, but I want to ask a question for each, but a very short answer, please, not exceeding 2 minutes. For Azerbaijan, you know, there's a very important issue at the very south. It's the Iran's nuclear program. We know that it has been excused to intervene Iran. So what is the approach of Azerbaijan regarding Iranian nuclear program? First of all, this is really a critical issue, because while you are speaking, I'm also checking the questions and also the updates. Now, Grossi, the head of Nuclear Energy Agency, is proposing a deal to the parties. I don't know the content, the scope, but it's important. Nuclear means a lot for me, and think that France announced that they're expanding their inventory. Poland said they will have nuclear weapons, and Iran, 60% enrichment is a great number. So we are in the mid of a nuclear environment, if you add Israel as well, with almost 400 warheads. I mean, they say that it's 250 though. What I know is that it's almost 400. So what is the approach of Azerbaijan regarding this nuclear armament? And in case it happens, what is the projection to defend or to secure Azerbaijan? Let me ask the question to Benyamin as well. Regarding the same nuclear issue, you have a nuclear energy plant, and now you are planning to, as Armenia, to build new nuclear plants. And there was a misunderstanding during the visit of once, because it's not clear, still not clear if Armenia is to build modular nuclear reactors. But affiliated to Iran, nuclear energy, you have it. You are also a country with nuclear energy. And on the other hand, Iran with a nuclear program mixed with energy, or we don't know if it's blended with nuclear arms. What is your projection? And Professor Aslanlı, I want to ask a specific question. If this nuclear issue is observed, Azerbaijan and Turkey are one of the most vulnerable ones. Turkey is building a nuclear energy plant, but the possession is on Russians. The second and third reactors are being planned, even though not realized, and it's a bit expensive, by the way. I remember the experience with the Japanese. The price was planned like $22 billion and appeared to be 44, then exceeded, projected at least to $70 billion because of the new security measures. So how do you assess this nuclear issue? If it could be an alternative to this hydrocarbon energy projections, pipelines, or resources. So what's your perspective? So let me begin with Mr. Mehmedov, please, 3 minutes each. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I mean, in case of Azerbaijan, let me tell you that, interestingly, in the case of Iran, for the foreseeable future, I think the main focus of tensions have shifted from nuclear to ballistic missiles, because that's so far emerged the main deterrence capability of Iran. And nuclear, interestingly, the United States and Israel killed the main guy who was the main restrainer when it comes to nuclear issue, Ali Khamenei. He had fatwa, and others. I think he was known for being more measured on nuclear issues, sometimes some flexibility. He opened in 2013, and then we had GCPOA. And now after him, I think the main expectation is that the Iranian hardliners who will have more, let's say, clout in decision making will go for, nuclear. That's at least higher probability now. I don't know if they will, but that's a higher probability. When it comes to Azerbaijan, Baku benefited a lot from 2015 GCPOA, when the United States and Iran agreed to a certain limit on Iranian enrichment, domestic 3.69%. And at that time, I think, Rouhani period, they were reformists in power. And I remember that at that time was the heyday of Iranian-Azerbaijani relations, despite some difficulties in bilateral ties. So the expectation is that as Iranian hardliners will rush to nuclear weapon, that will increase, of course, the probability of a domino effect in the region, and of course an arms race, which is I mean, very likely scenario that will trigger unprecedented uncertainty in the region. I will also mention Saudi Arabia. Recently, they had this agreement with the United States. They call it 1, 2, 3. But I think Saudis also opt for domestic enrichment. Yeah, for example, they have this similar agreement with now Armenia and also United Arab Emirates, but it excludes domestic enrichment. They get it from elsewhere. But in the case of Saudi Arabia, they I think are quite worried about Iran, and they also, I mean, I remember in the case of Turkey, Mr. Foreign Minister, Mr. Fidan, didn't answer that question when in the media he was asked. So yeah, it's a very uncertain situation, and we can see an arms race. Again, Mr. Aslanlı rightly mentioned, we don't know how this war will end, and but the likeliest scenario is that Iran will be weaker and more hardline controlled. That will increase the probability that they will rush for nuclear weapons. So we can have North Korean scenario in Iran, and that does not bode well for the region in terms of nuclear weapons, nuclear proliferation.
Okay, thank you. Benyamin, please. Unmute yourself, please. Unmute yourself. Benyamin. Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Murat. I think from Armenia's perspective, everything is clear. Armenia supports the full implementation of all provisions of NPT treaty, this nuclear proliferation treaty, which should apply to every country, including in the region. And I think Armenia understands that if any country, except Israel, will have nuclear weapons in the region, it will trigger arm race. So regardless, if it's Iran, then most probably Saudi Arabia and Turkey will follow. If it's Saudis, then Turkey and Iran will follow. And I don't believe that anyone thinks that having multiple nuclear armed countries in the region will bring more stability and security in the region. Definitely not. Regarding the Armenia's nuclear project, you are right. We have nuclear power plant, which will be operational at least until 2036. And this was built in Soviet times. Now we are in negotiations with different countries to construct a new nuclear power plant. Decision has already been made that Armenia will construct small modular reactors. So it's clear that Armenia made a decision. It's not going to construct like big nuclear reactors with 1,000 or 1,200 megawatts. Armenia made the decision that it will be small modular reactors, and negotiations are underway with United States, with Russia, with France, with China, with South Korea, I believe. So there is no final decision what company or what country Armenia will cooperate with, but decision has been made that the new nuclear power plant, which will follow after 2036, when current nuclear power plant will be closed, it will be small nuclear modular reactor-based nuclear power plant.
Okay, thank you. And Professor?
Thank you very much. So we definitely live in the age of nuclearization. So this is ongoing trend, and we see that it will deepen. Of course, Iranian issue, Iranian case can be the turning point, as also Armenian colleagues said. So it can be turning point in terms of the future nuclearization of this region. But even if we will see some counter trend in this particular region, in global scale, we will see continuation of this nuclearization. So, and we will see signs. For example, we know this recent civil nuclear summit in Paris. And when we look at these documents that France officially published, why they have these ambitions also to organize this second summit, we can see several motivations. The first is raising energy demand that all these countries search for alternative. The second motivation for nuclear is a decarbonization targets. Decarbonization targets also raise the importance of nuclear. And the third, France government officially put energy sovereignty. So this is also new perception, or not maybe new, but a renewing perception that nuclear energy is approached as a part of broader energy sovereignty concept or agenda in order to decrease this kind of external energy shocks that all these OECD countries experienced now because of this crisis in Middle East. And I think this Iran-Israel-US war will increase the importance of nuclear agenda for these kind of EU countries, for OECD countries, etc. So pro-nuclear political force also will use that to raise the hand that, okay, you see, so how it is dangerous to have this reliance on oil and gas, especially from the Middle East. So we will definitely see trends, but not only in civil application of nuclear energy. Again, in the case of France, we see that how France revised the nuclear doctrine and recently proposed this forward deterrence nuclear doctrine, putting nuclear capabilities of France to the center of European Union's new security architecture. So this is trend. It is ongoing trend. It will continue. So what the countries in this region can do. So again, Turkey's case is different. So Turkey started to gain this large-scale nuclear capabilities from this Akkuyu nuclear power plant, cooperating with Rosatom. For the second, third, even fourth nuclear power plants, Turkish governments maybe will have some different alternatives, not to continue only to cooperate with the same company, but to diversify, cooperating different companies from the Europe, US, and Asia, and Far East Asia. It will continue. But I see again, the niche where the Turkey also can build a cooperation with the South Caucasus countries, and this is, as Armenian colleagues point out, this is small modular reactor. So this is priority also for Turkey, this priority also for Armenia, and also this is a priority not in this SMR format, but in different way for Azerbaijan as well. And also let's not to forget about the Georgia. Georgia also had some nuclear capabilities during the Soviet Union. They had nuclear research reactor during the Soviet Union. So this kind of regional cooperation based on nuclear based research, building a nuclear research reactors, or some initial changing of expertise on small modular reactors can be niche for the future cooperation or communication, at least for the Turkey and South Caucasus Republic. But in any case of scenario, we will see this rising nuclearization trend in global scale, and we will see definitely some repercussions for this region as well.
Okay. Thank you so much to all. It was really a pleasure for me to host you, and answers were really more than satisfactory. Thank you so much. I hope audience also is benefiting, and also please don't forget this panel will be on YouTube or the other social media platforms and will be broadcasted continuously. I hope we contribute to the understanding of all who will click the link. Thank you so much, and that concludes the panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you.